First, I just want to say I am incredibly thankful to lots of people to put this kind of event together. It's really quite an amazing thing. Particularly to Messiah College and their staff. We thank the sound people, but there are all kinds of people around us that did all kinds of stuff. John Roberto, who's not here, but really opened our minds up with the workshop and the keynote address about how it is that we can use tools to really the tools that have emerged in the last 5 years to really begin to be in the pocket of everyone with our faith formation, and that was really outstanding. And of course, Rachel, who, did she disappear again on me? I can never see you. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah. And Pastor Vivetta Bullock, who is our ELCA representative, and I saw her earlier. There she is over there in the upper deck. Pastor Stephen Herr, who serves in multiple capacities, and he's everywhere all at once, but represented the ELCA Church Council and also did reference in council, and I was really grateful for those things. Our friends from the Kandy Diocese, thank you. All the people who went to the trouble of putting out displays and just sharing their ministry, and if you have not been to those places, you surely should go before they get taken down, if they haven't been already. To our Synod Council, who supports me in lots of things, to Kurt Strauss and Bruce Seacrest, who did immense amounts of work on the budget so that you all could sit here quietly while they presented it. So that was really a gift. The Reference and Council Committee, the Assembly Committee who put this event together, and then particularly I want to thank the staff of the Synod who, behind the scenes, it all seems very calm in here, right? But it's sort of like ducks on a pond. They're just paddling like crazy underneath the surface. And so Kathy Paul and Linda Lubolt and Kathy Dietrich and Marty Shiflett and Denise Ferguson, who did all the registration and all of the paperwork and all those kind of things. Yeah, and to Debbie Clark, who is my right hand in everything, and I'm grateful for her. I think we should give it up for Charlie Roberts in the pages, because everything is always where we need it to be. And my pastoral staff, Richard Jorgensen, Robert Blizzard, and Sharon Blizzard, who did all kinds of things behind the scenes. And if you haven't seen Sharon, she's behind the glass back there. She likes it back there, actually. Yeah. And Marcia Roscoe, who really was the brains behind the outfit and just made everything happen, and so I'm very grateful. And then to two people whom you wisely chose to re-elect to their positions, Vice President Bringman, who does incredible work with us, and I think any of you who are in ministry in a congregation, you know how important it is that the pastor rostered leaders partner with great lay leadership. And she models great lay leadership for us in the Synod, so thank you. And then finally to Tom McKee, who is the secretary, keeps us all in order, and you honored him and re-elected him, and I am grateful. And Bishop McCarney said, there's that person in the office that you have to go down the hall and see when you don't know what you're doing. That's Tom McKee. Thank you. And I also am very grateful for your honoring my 10th anniversary of ordination, and to Pastor Brad Dayette, if he's still hanging around, and his kind remarks. And I have to say, people ask me sometimes, what do you miss that you don't get to do anymore, that you're not a parish pastor? There are a few things, caring for people in the congregation, being at that liminal moments in their lives, but I miss my colleagues in Hanover. and they're wonderful colleagues. And so I was really grateful for Brad's words. Yeah. This has been a great experience for me. People ask me if I'm tired, and I have to tell you, I love Synod Assemblies. I have always loved Synod Assemblies, and I get my energy from Synod Assemblies. So I'm just wired up now. We are trying to make this experience as good as we possibly can for you, so we tried lots of new things this year. We have an artist in residence, which I think you all thought was really good. Yeah. We tried new forms of worship. We changed the schedule. We added additional youth representation. We moved into this venue. I think you all like these seats, so we're doing good. And I always leave Synod Assembly with this renewed sense of hope in Jesus Christ. And the videos that we see just show the amazing and bright ministries that are happening all around our synod, and all being done in Christ's name. I have to say, though, there's a little frustration, one, in being the bishop, and that is that I have to chair the meeting, so I don't get to really speak my mind about things. But then it occurred to me, besides the opening remarks, I get closing remarks. It's kind of like open mic season for the bishop. So, in the beginning, I said that the world is changing, and I talked about how some of the stories that we have from our past are limiting our movement in the future, particularly the story that says, one building, one pastor, we're a church. I look around our synod and I visit places and I look at kind of how we're structured and what we're doing. I look at some of our very small communities that have 6 Lutheran church buildings and 5 clergy, 2 of who are full-time, 3 are part-time, and the congregations say, we can't afford a full-time pastor because this is how it is. And in that community that has 6 buildings, they worship 300 people on a Sunday. And I looked, and their mission outreach is 70% less than a congregation that worships 300 people in one building. And it's not because they don't care more, it's that they're trapped in a structure that limits what they can do. One building, one pastor is a story that we need to think about. We need to look at re-engineering who we are and what we are. And I'm committed to re-engineering how the synod itself and our ministry that we share together will be structured and operate. And I suppose you've sent us a message that you've declined, or the amount of resource available to us has declined 37% in a time where your own resource declined 4%. So the message is, to me, that this shared ministry is not as valued as the buildings. I'm not sure that's where Jesus is, but that's where we are. Someone said to me yesterday, I don't know if we can do this pilot with John Roberto. I mean, it's $250. We just spent $60,000 on our steeple, and we're really kind of tight. I think as congregations, perhaps maybe we're just kind of turning in on ourselves. Curvatus ense. Anse. I knew that he'd straighten my Latin out. That's why I have him here. Oh, now I've got the theologians discussing Latin. Is this great that we can come here and talk about Latin? I learned from Dr. Crump. This comes from Augustine, who said, this is the nature of sin, is turning in on ourselves. Luther thought that as well. The model we're living in is not working. And we don't have the polity that I can make you change anything. So I'll change what we do in the synod. You need to go back to your congregations and decide what it is you want to do. There's been a movement about this one-day assembly thing. I don't get to speak to that, but now I get to, and here's my point. There's no way I'm letting you go to one-day assembly. This is the only opportunity we have to come together once a year as a church for both worship as a community, who we are, a church. It is our opportunity to come together for the building up, the edification, the education, the knowledge, the community that we can build as a synod, to move forward as a synod. Those are critical to us. And then we got to do some business. And then according to the state of Pennsylvania, we got to meet. But I don't want to decrease it. I want to increase it. I want it to be more than what it has been, and I want it to be better. So I don't think it needs to be shorter. I think it needs to be longer. And I get that it's expensive, but really, if you go to an Orioles game with your family, it costs more than coming to Synod Assembly for the whole weekend. I mean, what kind of choices are we making in our lives? I think it's worth spending some dollars to be together as the church. So, and you can disagree with me, and the good news is you're going to get to vote on that, because in 4 years there'll be a bishop election. But until then, you're probably going to have to put up with a 2-day assembly at least. I've gotten some feedback on Sunday worship. We're about to go into it. It always strikes me interesting when I get feedback, particularly negative, on something that we haven't actually done yet. But we restructured for a couple reasons. One was to allow people who could not take off Friday from work to be here for the assembly, and so we restructured the schedule for that. There's also a little selfish reason for me, and that is I wanted the opportunity to do what all my pastors get to do. They get to worship on Sunday with their congregation. And I don't get that opportunity. The difference between pastoring as the bishop, all the pastors, and the pastor's role is that every Sunday, pretty much, I got to see the people I was caring for. I hardly get to see you all. And so this is a great opportunity for me to be with you and to worship with you and to proclaim the gospel with you. And so I value that. And I think it was a little test for me to see whether or not we were willing to break away from the one pastor, one church, we can't worship unless the pastor's here model. Because the model's going to change. Right? We're going to have 20 retiring a year and 3 coming from seminary. The model's going to change. We're going to have to come up with new and creative ways to worship together, sometimes without a pastor. So, are we going to change this? Are we going to keep doing this? I don't know. I have to decide on which hills I want to die. But I think it says a lot about whether we're really ready and willing to change in the face of a changing world around us. Another little comment that went by in the assembly that I just thought I'd make a comment on is that we passed the compensation minimum guidelines, and someone asked, are they guidelines or requirements? And the answer is they're guidelines. But here's my comment on that. We can't afford a pastor, but we want them to work full-time anyway. Where is the justice in that? I had a conversation once when I was a pastor with the person in our finance who said, we think you deserve a $2,400 raise this year. but we can't give it to you because we don't have the money. And I said, I'm pretty sure you actually do have the money. And he said, no, I've looked at the budget and we don't have the money. And I said, there's 12 people sitting around the council table, and I'm not sure why you have to balance the budget out of my pocket. So I'll give $200 if everybody else around the table will give $200, and we'll be fine. I got the raise. They found it somewhere else. They didn't ask him for it. But here's the real story. It's just an economic story because I'm an old business guy. I'm going to have 20 pastors retiring and 3 coming in. Do you think you're going to get one if you don't pay? I'm sorry. This is kind of reality. This is the world we're living in. This is supply and demand. If you don't have enough vibrant stewardship and ministry to pay for a pastor, you probably don't have enough vibrant stewardship and ministry to be a congregation. Okay, so where does that leave us? It leaves me that I've never been more excited, because this is the moment in the church when we have an opportunity to step back and look at who we are and what we are and how we're going to do it, and to begin to recreate ourselves, to reborn anew as the church. And there are things that are really exciting me coming out of this assembly. John Roberto pointing out to us the power of how the internet and these devices, mine's over here beeping at me. I think Marcia's sending me messages. Am I right? Yeah. And it's amazing, folks say to me, there's no way we could live stream your worship into our facility, except 80% of them have the capability in their pocket. And almost all of them have it in their house because they watch Netflix all the time. So John Roberto got me excited in that moment. The other thing that really got me excited is the youth of the church. 4 of them wanted to serve on Synod Council. We could only find one person that wanted to be the vice president of the Synod. So next time we're going to have a youth be the vice president of the Synod. There are incredible bright spots going on in terms of hospitality, in terms of all those kinds of things. We are breaking down walls all over the Synod. We're creating new worshiping communities outside of buildings. We're using creativity and energy in new and exciting ways. I believe that God is with us. God is guiding us. And God's church will prevail, because it is the living, breathing body of Christ, and no matter what we do, God will prevail. And so I'm just going for the ride. So I can't wait to see what happens next, because this is a great, exciting time in the church, and I have had a great, exciting time with all of you. And so thank you very much.